All right, what's going on? Uh, Dawg Food Radio. We back again with another installment, and we're gonna be talking about the dismal, right? The dismal record going from 11 wins the previous season down to three this particular season. And I'm of the mindset that your coaches put you in position to win. Obviously, your front office picks the players. Um, in my opinion, this season falls on the coaching largely. The lion's share falls on the coaching. If you get credit for winning 11 games last season with 4 and 5 different quarterbacks, you're going to get the same amount of blame for only winning three with the same type of scenario and circumstances. But, we don't really, we try to come with a lot of stats on the Dawg Food show. So, what I want to get into is we're going to look at some coaches that were fired with a winning record. We're going to start there, and then we're going to go into this particular season. So you got Tony Dungy. Let me get these glasses on. I can't really see. All right, so you got Tony Dungy. He was fired after a 9-7 season in 2001. Blah, blah, blah. Buck's problem was on offense, never finished higher than 21st on that side of the ball. And we all know that right after he was fired, John Gruden pretty much won a Super Bowl with the same team. So he was fired after a 9-7 season. And then you got Marty Schottenheimer, former Browns coach there. He was fired after going 14-2. They lost to the Patriots in the divisional round. But this seems like it was more some issues within the front office. So maybe this wasn't just based on his performance, but still 14-2. Yeah, that's hard to really justify that. Mike Mularkey, Tennessee Titans. Again, I think this was kind of front office disputes here. Back-to-back 9-7 records, blah, blah, blah. But again, fired after 9-7 record. And then everybody, this is probably the most famous one besides the Tony Dungy. Lovie Smith, fired after going 10-6, had an overall 81-63 record with the Super Bowl appearance in 9 years. Again, a lot of the criticism was on the offense. And the main sentence that stood out to me was that the Bears were 17-19 during his tenure in December. So let's go ahead and stop sharing that. So you got a guy, coach of the Browns, five years, 5 seasons thus far, and you have a pretty decent sample size. 2 playoff appearances and 3 times that missed the playoffs, and I don't believe any back-to-back seasons with double-digit wins, I believe. So what it got me thinking is that I think any other coach in this circumstance with this particular season gets fired after going 3-12 in his 5th year. So let's look at the AFC North, and I want to look at December win-loss record, and we're going to go from 2020 all the way up to this year. So Harbaugh went 4-1 in 2020, Stefanski 2-2, Tomlin 2-3, Zach Taylor 2-2. In 2021, and this is the month of December, Harbaugh went 0-4, Stefanski went 1-2, Tomlin went 2-2, Zach Taylor went 2-2. Okay, let's go to 2022. Harbaugh went 3-1, Stefanski went 3-2, Tomlin went 3-1, Zach Taylor went 4-0. 2023, Harbaugh went 4-0, Stefanski went 4-1, Tomlin went 2-3, Zach Taylor went 3-2 in 2023. And then December again, 2024, Harbaugh went 4-1, Stefanski went 0-5 this year in the month of December. Tomlin went 2-3, Zach Taylor went 4-1. So overall, for the month of December, since 2020, Jim Harbaugh's 15-7, Stefanski's 10-12, Tomlin is 11-12, Zach Taylor is 15-9. So it looks like on this particular slide here, Harbaugh gets the win. And then that's not in order. We got it in order on another slide. All right, so let's look at January. Meaningful football. Everybody would say that meaningful football is played in December and January. So let's take it to January. 2020. Harbaugh went 2-1. Stefanski went 2-1. Tomlin 0-2. Zach Taylor 0-1. 2021, Harbaugh goes 0-2. Stefanski's 1-1. Tomlin 2-1. Zach Taylor 4-2. That's the year they went to the Super Bowl. Let's go 2022. Jim Harbaugh 0-3. Stefanski 1-1. Mike Tomlin 2-0. They didn't make the playoffs that year. That's why it says 2-0. And then Zach Taylor's 3-1. They went to the AFC Championship game, I believe, that season. 2023, Harbaugh went 1-2 in January. Stefanski 0-2. Tomlin 1-1. Zach Taylor 1-0, and they didn't make the playoffs. And we know in 2023, Stefanski, one of those games was because I think they rested the starters. That was last year when they had already locked up the playoff win. So that explains that one loss there. And then 24 in January. So far, Harbaugh has won a game. We don't know what's going to happen this weekend. Stefanski's 0-1, obviously. Tomlin lost, but they're in the playoffs, so we don't know what he's going to do. And then Zach Taylor went 1-0, but they didn't make the playoffs. So overall, in January, win-loss record going back to 2020. Jim Harbaugh's 4-7. Stefanski's 4-5. Tomlin is 5-5. Zach Taylor is 9-4. So if we go and tally all that up, in December from 2024, Harbaugh 15-7, Taylor 15-9, Tomlin 11-12, Stefanski 10-12. Let's read that again just to make the slide clear. This is in 2020 to 2024, December and January win-loss record. Jim Harbaugh is first with 15 wins and 7 losses. Zach Taylor is 2, 15 wins, 9 losses. Mike Tomlin is 3, 11 wins, 12 losses. Stefanski is 4, 10 wins and 12 losses. For the month of January, since 2020 to 2024, Zach Taylor is 9-4. Mike Tomlin is 5-5. Kevin Stefanski is 4-5. Jim Harbaugh is 4-7. Now we have that fully tallied up, combined. So if you combine December and January football, win-loss record, 2020 to 2024, Zach Taylor has been the best coach, win-loss wise, since 2020, winning 24 games in December and January and only losing 13. Jim Harbaugh is 19 wins to 14 losses. That's good for second place. Mike Tomlin is 16 wins to 17 losses, good for third place. Kevin Stefanski, 14 wins, 17 losses. That's good for last place. In the AFC North, in meaningful football, everybody knows that meaningful football is played in December and January. 2 coaches have an above 500 record. Tomlin is a game under 500. Stefanski is 3 games under 500. Now, just even if we combine we got the win-loss record, Zach Taylor actually has a Super Bowl appearance and an AFC Championship game appearance and 1 AFC Championship game title. So based on this, if we're talking about wins, losses, and wins are the only analytic stat that matters, I think everybody would agree with that. Zach Taylor has been the best coach. If you're using this standard, he's been the best coach since 2020 in this division. I don't really think you can argue that. Now, we know that Harbaugh has won a Super Bowl. We know that Tomlin has won a Super Bowl. So if you go with longevity and the totality of the career, okay, then yeah, sure. Zach Taylor probably has a little bit more work to do. But if we're just using the last 5 years in the AFC North, and everybody, hopefully you've been watching the Hard Knocks, and it's actually been pretty good. I hate to say the worst, but if we're just talking about statistics, and we've gone through some other statistics, the worst coach in the AFC North, statistically, team offense, wins if you score 20 or more, wins if you score less than 20. Stefanski is either third or fourth in those categories. This team, when it was dominant, it had a top 5 run game with a healthy Nick Chubb. They never had a pass offense ranking higher than 19th. Let's pause real quick for a quick break, and then we'll wrap this thing on up. Okay. So what does what does the win-loss thing in January and December, what does that have to do with the 2024 season? I think everybody agrees that if this team starts off 0-3, 0-4, 1-5, anything like that, they're probably firing Stefanski mid-season with a start like that. So the question is, again, going back to the article, you got coaches that were fired with winning records, um, actual Super Bowl appearances on their resume, one of them anyway. It's hard to justify that the front office, specifically Andrew Berry and Stefanski, that both of them stay. You can justify one or the other, but here's the thing with the whole Baker Mayfield piece and the Kevin Stefanski piece. If you have an investment that's handed to you, right? Somebody gives you 100 grand, 100 G's, and they say, all right, look, we're going to put this in this high yield savings account, or we're going to put it in this nice, ETF fund, whatever, and you're going to get a steady 5 to 6% return. You would say, oh, okay, cool. But then maybe you have a down year, right? 2021 being that down year, Baker Mayfield being injured. And then you say, well, you know what? I think this other fund over here can bring higher returns. We might get into the 15-20% return, double digit returns. And most people, well, it's kind of split, but let's just say people are like, well, you know what? I like the aggression. I like the move. Go ahead and pull the trigger on that. It's going to be a penalty. Maybe it's going to cost you 10 grand to pull your money out, move into this other fund. But okay, cool, whatever. And then you end up losing all your money. Whether, your wife and your husband does that or vice versa, or you're in business with your brother or your friend or whatever, somebody's going to have to answer for that 100,000 being spent up, being gone. In this example, Kevin Stefanski was handed a roster that was ready to win. Number one pick quarterback in Baker Mayfield. And, that 2021 season, when he got hurt and his shoulder, was messed up and he insisted on playing, for whatever reason, and obviously I don't know what goes on in the locker room, but for whatever reason, Stefanski didn't step in and say, hey, get rested. We going to hold it down till you get back. And that was essentially used as the reason, one of the reasons, that they got rid of Mayfield and tried to upgrade at quarterback. Now, I understand them trying to upgrade, get better. The 3 first-round picks, that was a little steep. Obviously, the contract was a little steep. But okay, if you're trying to win, you can applaud the move for trying to win. And again, based on my understanding, Kevin Stefanski didn't veto that. He didn't voice any displeasure with that move. Sounds like he was all for that move. Everybody that was a part of that decision. And okay, it doesn't work. And I'm not going to blame, the player that acquired for that. I'm not going to blame Baker Mayfield for that. The people that signed up for that are the ones that have to answer for that. And so, here you are going from 11 wins to 3 wins, which I think I read today was the largest win regression in the history of the franchise. Now you got the number 2 pick. I don't understand how nobody's really being held accountable for that. AVP got the axe. Ken Dorsey, who I think was given a raw deal because, the first 6 games of the season with Deshaun Watson, Kevin Stefanski was calling the plays. And if you read the ESPN article that came out earlier this week, I believe, they made it seem like when Jameis Winston became the starter, that Stefanski, that was one of the reasons that he handed the play calling off to Ken, as if he didn't want to call plays for Jameis Winston. That's how it seemed. I don't know if that's what what really happened. But with all that being said, everybody else has been the problem. Joe Woods, Alex Van Pelt, Odell Beckham, Baker Mayfield, Deshaun Watson. Bill Callahan leaving. At some point, given the list of coaches that we just named, your Lovie Smiths, your Marty Schottenheimers, your Tony Dungy's, Mike Mularkey, these are coaches that were fired with winning records. Now, 2 of those we can say were front office disputes. I think it was Schottenheimer and Mularkey. But the other 2, it was because the offense wasn't scoring enough points or wasn't complimentary enough of the defense. Now, I wish I had this pulled up. I'm going to go ahead and pull it up right now. But in 2020, The Browns held the Chiefs to 22 points, I believe it was, in the divisional round. And the offense, I believe, only scored, what was it, 19 points? Something like that. Let's look it up real quick. I think it was 19 points. No, 17 to 22. Okay, it's Patrick Mahomes. They had Tyreek Hill at that time. Kelsey's a couple years young. I mean, they're juggernaut offensively. Your defense held them to 22. They come out and score 17. Now, the week before at Pittsburgh, they scored 48 points. Now, let's take a look at what Cincinnati did when they played the Kansas City Chiefs. Their defense held them to 24 points, and they scored 27 points and got a trip to the Super Bowl out of that. So they talk about Kevin Stefanski like he is this offensive genius, that he is this pass, concept guru that can create an attack that gives defenses fits. That's kind of how they talk about him. Now, I don't know if he believes himself that. I don't know if he feels like maybe the media bigs him up, exalts him up. But the way that people talk about Stefanski, they make it seem like he's Kyle Shanahan or somebody. We've talked about it before. You can go look the stats up. Stefanski's never had higher than the 19th ranked passing attack. And since he's been in Cleveland, the bulk of the offense that was generated was because of Nick Chubb and the offensive line, because they were top 5 in the run game, 2021, and I believe in 22. They were top 5, somewhere in that order. And yet, Stefanski and the front office collectively decide that we're going to trade away number 1 pick, and get nothing for it, really. We're going to change the whole offense up. And then it don't work. Somebody has to answer to that. And unfortunately, I don't think you're going to get that. And obviously, we got a couple of months before the draft starts. And there's a lot of speculation on if they're going to take a quarterback or what are they going to do? Are they going to bring a free agent in, Kirk Cousins, all of that? It's sad to say, but I think it's possible, and you got to start thinking about the possibility that this team's window passed at the end of 21. I think it's time to really start being realistic about that, because now you have the Chubb injury, and even this offseason, you can go back and watch some of our earlier shows. I said Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry. You got to try to get one of them. You don't know when Chubb's going to be back, blah, blah, blah. And even when he does come back, you can pair him up. They say, hey, we good with the running back room. That's what they said. So, this window, and the defense is still solid. I think if you go look at the stats and, a lot of times these other teams that they played, 21 points was enough. 17 points was enough. The offense just wasn't a threat to them. So you got to ask yourself, are they going to get it right in the draft? And we'll take a look at how many Pro Bowlers that Andrew Berry has drafted since 2020. I don't think it's that many. It may not be any unless JLK got the Pro Bowl one time. But yeah, so whatever Vegas puts the Browns at next season, win-loss, whether it's 6 wins, 7 wins, 8 wins, whatever, that's probably what my expectation for the team is going to be. Because with Kevin Stefanski being at the helm, you've seen the sample size. I think your ceiling is a divisional round. And if you can't score more than 20 points in a game that matters, now we'll give Stefanski credit. I think I have that on here, over 20 points. When he scores over 20, 11-1 in 2020, 5-3 in 2021, 6-5 in 2022, and 9-2 in 2023. So when his offense can score over 20 points, he wins more games than he's above 500. But, and I don't know if I have it on here, it doesn't look like I do, but the games where they score less than 20, 19 or less, it's a sub 500 record, and I think it's the worst in the AFC North. So, you know, anything can happen. They may have a turnaround like the Vikings did, but I think that's very unlikely. I would give that a 10% chance of happening, regardless of what they do. But we got a show coming up, Fanatical L's. I think that's coming up in about an hour or so, something like that. So stuck with me to the end. Really appreciate that. If you're listening to it on the Apple Podcast, wherever you get your podcast, I encourage you to go watch the YouTube version or go on X or something and watch the video version so you can see the slides and see the visual element or whatever. But that'll do it. Again, appreciate you. If you stuck with me to the end, Happy New Year to you. And go Browns. Catch y'all on the next one.